Fantastic. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everyone who's tuned in tonight. You're tuning in to the live webcast of the Objector Church. We do this every week when things work out. Sunday nights, 6 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Central. We do this live on Facebook. If you want to follow us in the future, if you want to catch us live, go to facebook.com/objector.church. If you want to watch these episodes after the recorded format, and Jeff Patterson, one of our ministers with the church, he does a little bit of magic, making it a little bit smoother and whatnot in the editing. Really makes it a much more enjoyable thing to watch, in my opinion. But those are all available usually a day or two after broadcast up on our website at objector.church. Tonight I do want to thank everyone who's tuned in, especially want to thank Rena, who's helping with moderation. She's going to be on the main Facebook page where this is streaming. I know we also have a watch party going, and the reason I do that is just to catch some more viewers. I've learned the watch parties tend to get more viewers. So anyway, I'm also trying, as you can see, I'm in a different location than I have been in the past. I'm here at Nappy Ritz Books here in Oklahoma City's northeast side. Our local congregation, the Objector Church, we're now doing a lot of work with Nappy Ritz Books. They're letting us office here, which is really helpful. Place for me to go to record these in a more quieter setting than doing it at home, and also to get some work done at other times. So we're really grateful for Nappy Ritz Books. And if you're not familiar with this bookstore, I encourage you to check it out. They are Oklahoma's, as far as we know, the only Black-owned and operated bookstore in Oklahoma. They have a very unique and important perspective to share, but also this is the center of a ton of other community organizing. You have tutoring classes, you have workshops, you have so much stuff going on here all the time. I'm kind of awestruck by it, frankly. So again, check out Nappy Ritz Books. So for tonight, what we'll be doing, we'll be beginning with our open ritual we do every week as a bit of a centering and of a setting intention for us in our community. After that, we'll have 2 topics of discussion for tonight. And along the way, I welcome feedback. You can post that on the Facebook page as we go along. I'll be checking that periodically there and on the watch party. And if I hopefully catch your comments while on the air, I'll be happy to read them and add that to the discussion. But we really welcome conversation. We want this to not just be a one-way conversation. So anyway, though, we'll have 2 topics of discussion tonight. The first topic will be the interrelated topics of GI rights and GI resistance. And I'm going to make an argument tonight why it's important for people who care about the cause of peace to care about American service members and what they're dealing with, and why caring about service members does not mean you support war effort. So that'll be the first part. And the second part, we'll be talking about the future of the Objector Church and the fact that we're at a bit of a turning point here, and there's some key decisions to be made. And so I want to involve you as the community in this and give you the opportunities to step up and continue this work in some real ways. So we'll be talking about that in the second half of this program. So first, though, for our ritual, what we've been doing is lighting candles as an open ritual. We do this because we are an interfaith religious humanist community, meaning that we deal with the big issues often dealt with by different spiritual traditions, but we want to do so in our explorations, particularly in our collective time together when we're trying to reach the broadest possible audience and the broadest nature of our community. We want this to be an open space for traditionally religious, not traditionally religious, people of various backgrounds. And so we wanted to, but we also wanted to have some sense of the part of religion that many people still find helpful, and that is ritual. And so this candle lighting ritual is our attempt to do that. And we light 3 candles. The first candle I'm going to light, this one represents the past. And in lighting this candle, I'm thinking tonight, we think not only about the concept of the past, the idea of all the forces and the people and all the things that have brought us to this moment, for good or bad, but also we take a moment to think about those who we miss, those who've gone before us, those we may still be grieving, and giving some space for that to happen here as a community. And so in lighting this candle tonight, we're thinking about all those we're grateful for, all those were mourning. And tonight I want to specifically name a few folks by name. And if there's someone you'd like to have their name read, if you can post that on the Facebook comments page, we can all join in remembering those folks as well. But tonight, I'm particularly thinking about our friend Susan Lee. Susan Lee was one of the co-founders of the Center for Conscience and Action, which is the organization that has supported me for many years now. It's, by the way, Center for Conscience and Action today is one of the projects of the Oklahoma Objector Church. It's we fiscally sponsor the Center for Conscience and Action. But Susan Lee was a co-founder of that organization. She spent many years working in many areas for the cause of peace. She was a dedicated Catholic worker. She was a delegate, part of the delegation from Voices in the Wilderness to Iraq during the days of the sanctions. Many people don't know, but probably more people died due to the U.S. sanctions in Iraq than died even in the wars. Susan was one of a brave few that defied the law for the sake of the people of Iraq. Susan also is very dedicated to the cause of military counter-recruitment, especially trying to reach out to the religious community and helping religious people to reconnect with the peace roots of many traditions. And she was a dear friend, so I'm thinking about her tonight. Also tonight, though, I want to remember not people I know personally, but people many of us are thinking about tonight, and that is those who died in the tornadoes here in Oklahoma. The latest report is 6 people that died, including 2 in El Reno. And what I think about a lot with this tragedy, there's, of course, a certain element of randomness to it. Tornadoes are weird. People 100 yards away could be barely touched. But it's not just random, because our society, we have a stratified society in which the poor are discriminated against in many, many ways. And so it is not a surprise that the deaths that happened in the tornado were among some of the poorest of our communities. And so thinking about them and then thinking about our past, we're seeking to find out how it can shape us, inform us, and motivate us. And so that stands to mind today. The second candle we'll light is for the future. And in lighting this candle, we're not just talking about the abstract idea of the future, but we're talking about really more particularly something very concrete and real. And that is, oh, didn't stay lit. We're thinking about young people, youth, those who are young, who are the place that they're at in their lives, and how we live our lives affects them, and all the things we work for, we hope for, we think of them in lighting this candle. And the last candle, and tonight I'm going to light them using both the past candle and the future candle. I'm going to light the candle for the present. And I light it this way because the present is most important. It's the moment in time that we are at. We really can't control the past and the future. The past is done, the future is yet to come. We can, certainly the past influences it all, and certainly hope and work for the future, but really we can't control it. All we can control is right now. And so I want to welcome anyone who's watching this to take this moment, to reclaim it. And many religious traditions have meditative practices involving the breath. And so I invite you to take a moment, just 2 breaths, to breathe in and be present in this moment. In this moment, in this time, in this physical space, and for those connecting online through cyberspace and all of that, this moment. Even if you're watching recorded format later, you can still reclaim the moment you're in. And then breathe out. To say that this time is special, this time is worthwhile, this time is sacred, like time always is. And then breathe out. Anyway, that's our opening ritual. It's a way of kind of shaping this time and of entering into it. Okay, let me see if I got any comments coming. If anyone does have comments along the way, please share them. Okay, we have one comment already, and that is, what is meant by GI rights? That is a great question, and we will talk about that in just a moment, because that's our next topic of conversation, is the topic of GI rights. And the reason I want to talk about GI rights as a concept is because I just, a week ago, the weekend before last, I got to go to Chicago for the National GI Rights Network Conference. And this group of people, it was under about 20 people or so for those who are there the whole time. These are some very dedicated, mostly volunteers, a few paid staffers from different nonprofits, but these are the folks that answer the phones for the National GI Rights Hotline. And by the way, if you're not familiar with the hotline, do I have one of the cards here? I usually do. GIRightsHotline.org. The phone number for them, by the way, is 1-877-447-4487. But these are some pretty awesome folks. These are also dedicated peace activists. And for many, this may seem like a contradictory, weird thing, that peace activists are working to protect the rights of service members. But I want to argue today that there is an important connection between these concepts of why working for peace often means supporting service members. I also want to debunk the idea sent out by our culture that supporting the troops must mean supporting the war effort. I would argue, no, that is incorrect. Often the way we support the troops is by opposing the war effort and working on behalf of the rights of all those who are in the military. So I want to talk, anyway, this conference, it was really a powerful time, a lot of instructional information on the nuts and bolts of how you help service members in various situations. Those who attended, by the way, came from a variety of backgrounds and perspectives. We had many GI rights counselors, that is those paralegal counselors, not lawyers, but people who help people to start the process. These folks play an important triage role. They often do referrals to various qualified professionals, including physical and mental health professionals, also legal professionals. But they also help service members to act for themselves, to know that, yes, there's a regulation on this subject, and here's the link, and now you can read it for yourself, and you can act upon it. This is important because the military so often as an institution disempowers service members, takes away service members' ability to stand up and to act for themselves. And so what the GI Rights Network is about is empowerment. But along with this, we had others at the conference. We had some people from the mental health field. We had several lawyers, including myself. And then we had people who were just supportive or who want to learn more. We're really excited. Michael McPherson, I believe his name, is the executive director of Veterans for Peace. He was there for part of the time. You know, it's just a really sweet, wonderful time of reconnecting with some dear old friends and people who have been doing this work for a long, long time. But being there, for me, reignited a lot of my passion for this area of work and why it is so important. And I want to talk about that more, why it's important. And why it's important from a peace perspective. For me, the reason why it's important is this concept, and I've heard it on seen it on many protest signs, I've seen it on bumper stickers, but this phraseology that says, no justice, no peace. The idea here is that often well-meaning people tell oppressed people, be peaceful, don't object, don't raise a stink about things, you know, just be peaceful and let it go. The problem is that's never an appropriate answer to tell the people who are oppressed. What is important sometimes is that we need, that often there is a time when we need to, there needs to be a pushback. And obviously, from a peace perspective, we hope it to be nonviolent, but we can't, the answer is not inaction. So for people in the military, I would argue they are an oppressed group of people. These are people who in many ways have been disempowered, who have had their autonomy taken from them at a very vulnerable time. What do I mean by that? Well, let's look at the average person who joins the military. And it's difficult because this is a big group of people, diverse group of people, increasingly both male and female, very racially diverse, more racially diverse than the general population, by the way. Not so diverse when it comes to socioeconomics, but there are exceptions. I have met well-off kids who grew up in very privileged backgrounds who enlist the military for a wide variety of reasons. But generally, most of the military enlistees are financially at a difficult place. If you look at this group as a whole, what can you say? First of all, they enlist very young. The U.S. military enlists people as young as age 17 with parental signature. Most enlist, though, at 18. But at age 18, we know from modern brain science that our brains are not fully formed. Yes, in one sense, we treat 18-year-olds as adults in the eyes of the law, and yet in many ways we do not, such as drinking laws, for instance, because there's the reality that 18, 19, 20-year-olds' mind is not fully formed, and yet that is when they are recruited. Why do people join? If you look at the statistics, the overwhelming majority, it's connected to money, either money for college or money just to get by. Often for many young people, at this point in time, it is very difficult to spring out, to leave the home of your family where you've come from and to live on your own. So for many people who want that, a way to do that is perceived to be the military. Money is often the issue, but not always. A significant number of people, that may be a big part of it, but also many people who enlist do so for very idealistic reasons, because they want to support their country. They want to protect their family. They often have very high ideals coming into this. Of course, reality usually kicks in when members of the military who join for very idealistic reasons realize that their high ideals, their conscience, is often the thing that is most disapproved of in the military. By the way, I do want to mention real quick, I've had a few comments here, and I'm still trying to figure out how to do the comments in this new location with different computers. So I'm trying to monitor a couple different computers and working on that. But one person wanted me to mention that the GI Rights Hotline is a non-governmental organization. It is a network of nonprofit, non-governmental groups, not affiliated with the government, not part of the military. They are dealing with these issues. These are very trained, qualified people, often more knowledgeable in military regulations than many military officials, but they are not part of the system. That independence is very important. Okay, so going back to our topic, talking about why GI rights is important. So some join for money. The second group join for idealistic reasons. And between those two categories, you've got the majority of reasons why people join. I would add a third one, though, that's often not stated explicitly, but is there. And that is for many young people, they are yearning for family. They're yearning for connection. A lot of folks in our society have estranged relations with their families of origin. That's life for a lot of people. And for many folks in this situation, particularly young adults who are trying to find their way, the military is a promising place to provide structure, to provide family, community. Again, the reality of the military is often very different than what is promised, but that's why people join. Now, what happens when people do join? Many people say today, we have voluntary military. Why would anyone have problems? Or why should anyone question at all? Well, we have theoretically a voluntary military. We don't have the draft in place right now. Now, we have the system of draft registration, the selective service, but no one's being drafted. But the proportion of who is enlisting doesn't line up with society as a whole. It is very racially diverse, more racially diverse than the general population, but it is economically unbalanced. And so because of this, many people enlist, I would argue, through a bit of coercion, through some degree of duress. Legally, by the way, duress means you have this imminent fear of losing your life. That rarely applies. But for many people, it does seem like that their choices between the military or not seem pretty dire. And so I would argue this isn't really a voluntary transaction. So beyond that, though, once people are in the military, what is their experience? Well, a great example of this, and I'm going to share the link here. Just a few days ago on Twitter, the U.S. Army posted something, and it was kind of interesting, to say the least. I'm having some, let's see if I can get this to work. And this was on Twitter, I believe on the U.S. Army's Twitter page. And now I'm going to pull it up over here, because this is a good example of what the military situation is really like. Basically, to give a nutshell while this is loading, the military often creates lots of PR puff type of stuff. For instance, here, this is the original tweet. It said, U.S. Army, here from PFC Nathan Spencer, a scout with the Fighting First, who shares how the U.S. Army has influenced his life. And it's a video. And the original version of this said something about why I serve, or how has the military influenced my life. The comment that came shortly after that was, how has serving impacted you? Shortly after that, a lot of comments came in. Now, by the way, I should mention, if you look at the tweeting now, you see you see this PR stuff from the Army trying to explain this away. But what happened was the initial responses were from people that went through some really hard times. I'll read you just a few. One of these is from, I won't read the names. You can look at the tweet stream if you want, but I'll read just a few of these. One person posted, when I got out of the Army in 2010, I became addicted to heroin. It was my only escape. I lost my family, ended up in prison, in and out of jail more times than I can count, and am now luckily coming up on 2 years clean this August. I'm 30 years old with the mind of an 18-year-old. Here's another one, and I'm going to, by the way, in reading this, there's going to be some bad words. If you're offended by bad words, sorry. But another comment said, my cousin was institutionalized for months after his tours in Iraq. He can't function properly without a shitload of meds daily. The family doesn't allow him to sleep in the house because he is unpredictable. He sleeps in the shed out back. He has a nice Benz, though, so yay. Let's see a few more. My stepdad served, and I grew up in a domestic violence household since I was 3 because he had PTSD from Desert Storm. Another comment, my dad was a Vietnam vet, and I suffered through his PTSD. I was whipped to the belt for not understanding how to calculate percentages. Another response, I'm permanently 5 years behind my peer group in any of my civilian career pursuits, but I got a free degree, so that's cool, I guess. My brother-in-law tried to kill his brother after being tapped on the shoulder due to having a flashback from being in Afghanistan at a kid's parties. Another post, I have a laundry list of medical issues, severe disability, and PTSD that has all but alienated friends and family. Can't keep a job and have difficulty interacting with people. I receive subpar medical care at VA Medical Center, but it's better than most. The military ruined my life. Kicked rocks. Anyway, that's just a few of them. There's a lot more here. I point this out to say this is reality. This was the unscripted moment. The Army wanted to present this nice, fluffy PR piece, but they can't control social media. And the reality is people posted back. How the military affected their lives, how serving affected their lives was not good. In other words, we are dealing with issues of oppression. And so from that standpoint, I want to make the argument that working for peace often means dealing with issues of injustice. And if we want to fix this system, we have to deal with the injustice. Now, I would go further, of course. I want to get rid of the system someday. But until that day comes, we have to deal with the issues of injustice within the military itself. And we also have to keep reminding ourselves of, why do people serve? Why are they in this position? These are good folks. The majority, probably 95% of my clients over the years have been members of the military. Some of my favorite people in the world. I have some dear friends I stay in touch with 10 years or more after working with them. These are good folks. These are people, idealistic people when they joined. They're idealistic still now, despite the cynicism and jadedness that's quite understandable. These are good folks. But our country has treated them like dirt. And to me, what the GI Rights Network is about, it's about righting this wrong. It's about empowering these young people, and they're mostly young, to act for themselves, to protect their rights, to protect themselves from sexual harassment, sexual assault, racial prejudice, mistreatment in many, many ways. Is important. Now, connected to this, though, is another issue the issue of GI resistance. By the way, I'm going to real quick check and see how we're doing on our comment side of things. And again, I'm going to have to refigure this computer situation. This is not working as well as I wanted. But Rena, if I'm missing any important comments, if you could privately message me, that would be super awesome, because it's just not coming through the way I had hoped. So, by the way, if anyone does have questions, please post them there on Facebook. We will get to them if we can during the program. If not, I'd be glad to talk about it later on in comments or through email. Also, if you have thoughts on the subject you don't want to share in a public venue, but you want someone to listen to, be very welcome to hear from you. Would love to hear from you and talk to you. You can shoot me an email at james@objector.church. Okay, by the way, I want to, got another comment here from Rena, explaining a little more on the Twitter thing. She says, the number of comments that noted the many negative impacts of service vastly outnumbered the positive. The Army ended up responding with a very PR-shaped tweet about how much they care about service members. The tweets proved otherwise, in many instances with a clear pattern, a clear example. And that's why it's so important that the GI Rights Hotline, the GI Rights movement, is so needed. Thank you, Rena, for that, and I strongly agree. Now, interconnected with the issue of GI rights, empowering service members, is the issue of GI resistance. This is a more controversial subject because we're dealing with things that sometimes are within the law, sometimes are outside of the law. That includes things such as applying for a discharge as a conscientious objector, which, by the way, is 100% legal. That is something that's provided for in the law. And those people who are able to go through that process, I admire them deeply. It is not easy. It takes a lot of persistence and determination, but many people, a growing number of people, have extricated themselves from the system through the conscientious objector process. By the way, I want to give a quick shout out to my friends at the Center for Conscience and War. They are, by the way, one of the member groups of the GI Rights Network, but their specific focus is conscience objection. These folks have an amazing track record, and I've seen them over and over again take on cases and win. Very awesome folks. But you can find them. I believe their website is centeronconscience.org. If you're a service member, you're thinking about applying for CO status, there's lots of places to go for help, but I would begin with CCW. And of course, I would love to talk to you too, but really, I actually recommend talking to CCW first, because these folks are really good at what they do. Most of them are not attorneys. I think they have one attorney on staff now, which is really awesome. New attorney, a mom, well, she's been doing this for a few years, but new in this job. She's phenomenal, but they have a really good organization, and they are really good at getting results from CO cases. But there's other forms of resistance. It includes service members just finding small ways to push back, reclaim autonomy in their lives. Sometimes it means through using the administrative processes, filing complaints, filing congressional inquiries, things like that. But sometimes it also includes things that include breaking the law, such as going AWOL, such as refusing an illegal order, such as refusing to deploy. By the way, I should add, refusing an illegal order isn't illegal under the law, but is often treated as illegal by the military. That's a whole other subject. But for people in this position, it's a very difficult road. And yet, if we look at history, GI resistance has ended wars. This had played a major role in it. If you look at particularly the Vietnam War, I would argue there's really solid evidence to indicate the Vietnam War would have lasted a lot longer if it were not for the organizing efforts of members of the military and veterans who organized so hard that by the end of the war, Nixon could not count on the troops to carry out the missions they were ordered. If necessary, there are members of the military who would kill their own commanders rather than do orders they didn't want to do anymore. That's the level of resistance we're talking about. By the way, I'm not advocating the violence, obviously, but what I am saying is that there comes a time when people reclaim their own autonomy, when they take actions for themselves and for their comrades, and they don't care what the authorities say. This is important too. Now, the GI rights side of it is dealing with people who work within the system and all of that, and that's an important element. But I would argue GI resistance is integrally tied to that, and both groups of people, those in the military who are simply asserting their rights, wanting fair treatment, but also those who are wanting to resist, they all need support in a variety of ways. And that brings us to the topic of Why? How can the peace movement as a whole support these movements dealing with issues of GI rights, GI resistance? On the GI rights side of things, I would say the first and most important group to look at is the network itself, the GI Rights Network. Their website, GIRightsHotline.org, they are doing phenomenal work. And just as someone who's worked for them for many years, I can say that I'm not just saying this, the quality of care has gone up and up and up. Service members who call today are getting such a high level quality care. It's free to them. It's confidential. And again, it's coming from an independent perspective, but one that's educated. In other words, many people go online to find information about how to get discharged, how to deal with this problem or that problem. The problem is that the internet often provides inconsistent, inaccurate information. Sometimes the advice being given are even being given by hostile parties. Military recruiters are notoriously bad for posting unhelpful comments to service members who are trying to get help. So it's important that there's independent help out there. And that's where the GI rights side of it comes in. But along with it, each of the GI rights hotline is composed of local nodes, local groups that are doing this work. And so, again, you can find out information about those on their website. But if you're out there and if you're wanting to get involved, if you live in one of these communities, this is a great way to get involved. There are active GI rights groups. I will try to cite them. I hope it won't offend anybody. The Bay Area of San Francisco has a very strong and active group. In Humboldt County, California, there's a group. In the Flint Hills of Kansas, Manhattan, Kansas, very dedicated, very tiny, but very dedicated group. The Center for Conscience and War, which includes also Titus Peachy, who works with them in Pennsylvania. We have several independent counselors who work alongside another group that may be physically located elsewhere. There's Quaker House in North Carolina. Each of these member groups, and there's probably some others I've forgotten, but they are very involved in their communities, often not just taking the calls to the hotline or answering emails, but doing other work in person. I know, for instance, Quaker House has someone who does mental health counseling that's involved in the organization, is one good example. I know that the Bay Area group, they have a law student intern program helping to train future military attorneys on these issues. There's a lot of things these groups are doing, but if you're in one of these local communities, I encourage you to get involved. Another group that's really important that's related to this work is CMRN. That's the Civilian Medical Resources Network. I don't have their website in front of me, but I will, in recorded form, will post a link to them later. They are a part of the movement that's organizing around the issue of mental and physical health concerns and helping for service members that are seeking a discharge, seeking help in various ways, to have someone to go to provide low or no cost psychiatric and other kinds of evaluations to help their cases. CMRN has really gone to bat for some of my clients, and I've seen them do it for others. And so they are a great group to support. That's the GI rights side of things. Another issue I'm not talking about tonight that's important, it's a whole other big topic, is the issue of veterans' rights and how they're treated. There are more resources out there for them. That's a whole other topic I won't get into tonight, but I think it's also worthy of concern. By the way, okay, the CMRN's website is civilianmedicalresources.net. Again, that is civilianmedicalresources.net. Okay, so we've talked now about GI rights and kind of related the medical side, support side of that. And now we'll talk about the issue of GI resistance and some support being offered there. One of the important areas that groups there is Courage to Resist, and that's their website is couragetoresist.org. This group is important to us because the Objector Church, we fiscally sponsor Courage to Resist. The leadership of the Objector Church are all dedicated, longtime volunteers with Courage to Resist, or either volunteers or staffers. Courage to Resist has been doing incredible work for many, many years. Probably most notably, a lot of people know them through the case of Chelsea Manning, and when she was in military prison being treated in terrible, terrible ways. Courage to Resist took up her cause, raised money to get her quality legal defense. But Courage to Resist has also done many other cases that may not be so high profile, that may not get as much attention and yet need help. I've been fortunate to be the attorney on many of these cases, and they're cases that I wanted to take. I would have done my best to take them somehow, some way, but the client simply had no money. And I like to eat. And so it was wonderful to have a group like Courage to Resist raise money when needed so that I could take on these cases and not have to do them completely pro bono. And for the clients to get the legal help they needed, someone from the outside. It can be really helpful, particularly for cases of the service members that are resisting, who are pushing back for reasons of conscience, for reasons of religion, for reasons of political convictions. It's often very helpful to have an outside force on the case. And Courage to Resist made that possible. Also, I have to mention About Face, Veterans Against the War, as well as Veterans for Peace. These are groups that are organizing active duty and veterans to better them, to take care of themselves and to organize against war in a variety of ways. Right now, you have the Drop the Mic campaign coming from About Face. Veterans for Peace has been very involved in many things, particularly posing right now the possible U.S. incursions into Iran and Venezuela. Veterans for Peace has taken the ball and ran with it and has done fantastic work. There are other groups out there. I'm just mentioning the ones that I work with the most. But I would argue for all of these groups, they need support in a variety of ways. And so that comes into the question of what can ordinary people do, particularly activists. Before we go on, I do want to check comments. We have the one really exciting thing going on. There are some new podcasts you put out by Courage to Resist. One of them is at VietnamFullDisclosure.org. This is a podcast by resistors from the Vietnam era telling their stories. But also Courage to Resist has podcasts going all the time. You can find those at couragetoresist.org/podcast. So what can we do? Well, first of all, of course, is I'd say if you live in a local community where there's a GI rights or GI resistance work happening, get involved. Again, that's including places such as, okay, just got a comment. Okay, so left off at, okay, so sorry, I had something break down here, but I think we're going again. Okay, so we'll talk about what can people do as activists to support GI rights, GI resistance. First of all, if you live in a community where there is an active GI rights resistance group going, get involved. Those communities include Northern California, the Bay Area, Humboldt County, Manhattan, Kansas, Fayetteville, North Carolina, the Washington, D.C. metro area, probably some other areas I'm forgetting about. But those local communities are places where you can directly get involved in some awesome ways. Also, I mentioned if you are a psychologist, psychiatrist, social worker, licensed professional counselor, or a medical doctor, CMRN would love to talk to you. They're looking for people all the time to help in writing quality evaluations that can turn cases around. And so, encourage you, that's a great way to get involved, is with CMRN. Again, that's at civilianmedicalresources.net. Okay, second area. On the resistance side of things, again, I'd say support the groups doing that work and help publicize the fact that resistance can happen and still is happening. Again, I encourage you to check out Courage to Resist, About Face, particularly the Drop the Mic campaign. Getting the word out is important, but also financial support is essential. Finally, I would say the most important thing more than anything is publicity. Particularly, though, think about for the people in your lives who may be a part of the military. Young people who are about to enlist or who have already enlisted, they're often encountering difficult times that they don't think there's anyone safe to talk to. Anybody can be a friend to a service member, and anybody can help their friend get in touch with the GI Rights Network. Anybody can do that. You don't have to know the law. You don't have to know anything. You just need to show kindness and love to someone who's struggling. And of course, refer them, point them towards people that can help. Again, the GI Rights Hotline is a good starting place. There's other things on the publicity side, and I'm hoping we'll get more of these printed soon. Courage to Resist has some really cool little foldy cards. I've used them for years. It just says military personnel, sick and tired of endless war, and then there's links to some of the key resources. Other side, it says you may not need this info, but one of your buddies will. There's resources like there's tons of other resources. The GI Rights Hotline has some similar cards out there. But one thing I love doing is if you're flying, if you're taking the train, if you see service members in uniform, just walk up to them and say, hey, just want to hand this to you. You may never need it, but if you do, these folks help service members with legal problems, with problems you may encounter. I've given these to many people in public transit situations, and only once had someone declined taking the card. Most service members will thank me for it. They may ask questions about it. Once they know more about the GI Rights Network, they're really excited to take the card, and many of them hang on to it. So we all can do that. We can also just help to get the word out, to get buzz going on social media. All of these things are important. And most of all, just making friends, being kind to people in the military, and particularly from a peace perspective. Rank and file, I'm not talking about generals. Give the generals a piece of your mind if you ever are privileged enough to hang out with one of them. But for your low-level enlisted members of the Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, etc., they're stuck in a bad situation. So don't treat them like dirt. Show them love, show them kindness, and then point them to people that can help them if they have problems. So anyway, that's our conversation tonight about GI rights and GI resistance. Would love to continue this conversation. If anyone has questions, comments, feel free to post them. And again, in future episodes, we may flesh out some of these issues in more detail. But that's where I'm at right now, is talking about those issues. Okay. Well, for the next bit of conversation, I want to talk about the future of the Objector Church and the future of this webcast in particular. Like many nonprofits, we are struggling financially. It has not been easy. We have a lot of important work happening right now that we are doing in a wide variety of places, mostly through Courage to Resist, but also with the Objector Church itself. And what we're really trying to do is to give folks an alternative, to give people a chance to have some of the experiences of religion that are positive in their lives, but to do so without judgment, without some of the crap, frankly, to be able to do so in a way that's not exclusivist, but rather is inclusive. In other words, if you want to join our community, we're not asking you, what do you believe about God? We don't do that. You can be an atheist for all we care. What we care about is, are you trying your best to be a good person here on planet Earth? Are you trying to make things better? Or are you working for peace? Those are the questions we care about. We're looking at this broader, bigger thing. Now, many of us have more particular expressions of spirituality. For myself, I have very much a Christian background for many years, and these days I'm also very much, Judaism has been my primary personal spiritual journey. But that's my journey. Your journey may be completely different, and that's okay. Here at the Objector Church, we're making a space for people to be themselves. And yes, you bring your baggage with you, you bring your traditions with you, but in this space, we're trying to create a place for everyone to be themselves, for us to have real conversations, for there to be real community, and to not have all of these dividing walls that society, that institutions want to put up. And so we want to continue this work. And so we have a few details to work out, but I will be starting probably in the next couple of days a crowdfunding campaign. And I'm cueing it to an important holiday in my life, and that is my birthday. Yes, I'm one of those ridiculous people online who's using their birthday to raise money. Sue me. Well, please don't sue me. But I am using this excuse as a chance to get the word out, to fundraise for what we're doing. By the way, I did have a comment here. It's real important. Rena posted, we also have non-believers involved. That's a very important point. We are a community that is very atheist and agnostic friendly. Of our ministers, quite a few of them are either atheist or agnostic. So we don't have a forced conformity on the issue of God, the issue of a certain spiritual practice or another. What we do say is that human beings, we have responsibility for our lives, our place here on planet Earth, and that we can act upon it. And because of that, we need to look at the commonality that all human beings have. If our particular traditions, political persuasions, religious persuasions get in the way of that, then we need to set those things aside to focus on humanity as a whole. So, by the way, if other folks have questions about the Objector Church, by the way, I'd love to answer those along the way as well. I will throw out, a lot of people have thrown up the word church in our name, and I have to admit, I'm Now, I have mixed feelings about the word. Part of what we're doing, though, is we are using the legal construct in the laws of the United States. Church, or a religious institution, has certain privileges and rights, and I would argue responsibilities. And so we're taking that and using it, but we're doing so with a different stated intention. We are dealing with the big issues of ethics, morality, identity, meaning, making the world better, like traditional religions do, but we're doing so from an inclusive, non-dogmatic perspective. And so that's why we use the word church in our name, is really just kind of connecting with that concept. But again, we're a church in one sense, in another sense, we're not. We're many more things than that. We are a community of free thinkers. We are a motley group of people been kicked out of other groups who have not been felt loved, and we needed a place of our own. So that's kind of what we're about. So anyway, I'm starting this crowdsourced funding campaign, and really what I'm focusing on, it'll probably be a couple weeks long, but what we'll be doing is focusing on some targeted fundraising so that I can continue to be paid for my work through the Objector Church. I don't plan on going anywhere if we don't succeed in this fundraising, but I will say I will not be able to do as much work with the church if I have to do it as a volunteer, because I have to pay the bills. And so the money is important. I wish it wasn't, but it is. And so I wanted to share just a moment here to share a little bit about what I would like to do if the funding and hoping comes in. First thing, and this is a really biggie, is I'm in the process of doing a final revision, final editing of the 2019 edition of my book, U.S. Army AWOL, a Form Book of Practice Guide. And let me see, do I have a copy of that here? Print copy? I thought I did, but I may not. I do not, unfortunately. If you are on Amazon, by the way, or any of those major booksellers, you can do a search. Just search my name or search for U.S. Army AWOL Form Book of Practice Guide. But it's a book that basically puts together all the tools I wished I had when I first became a lawyer. When I first became a lawyer, I couldn't find all these resources in one place. There were some good resources. The book Helping Out by Alex Stody was immensely helpful. I found a few other books, but a lot of this wasn't put together and it wasn't up to date. And so the U.S. Army AWOL book, I really tried to focus on absence offenses in the military. Wrote it in 2012. I've done a few updates over the years, but haven't done a major revision until now. And so I'd like to really not just finish that. It's nearing a completion now, but I really like to take it and publicize it much more. Another part of this is I want to have every member node of the GI Rights Network to have a free electronic copy of this book. And I'd like to provide this copy for free for any member of the enlisted member of the military. Now, for the officers, you need to pay for it because you have the money. You get paid enough, you can buy the book. But enlisted folks who want this book, I want to get it in their hands for free electronically. It'll be available as a print book too, but I want to have this book available to the GI Rights Network. Many of these folks are volunteers. They're not getting paid for this, most of them. And so they shouldn't have to pay for a resource like this. And so that's one of the things I would like to do if I can continue to in a paid position. I also want to continue to provide pro bono legal consulting with the GI Rights Network on important cases. They encounter a lot of situations. Many of these cases are not cases I end up taking on as the lawyer, but I'm instead just consulting with a counselor, helping them with issues as they come up. Again, my paid staff time helps me to be able to do that. I also want to keep producing this webcast on a weekly basis. I really enjoy doing this. We've had, besides the presentation nights each night while I'm speaking, we also have some fantastic interviews. We've talked with Ed Hasbrook, pioneer draft resistor. We had an interview with Victor Augusto a few weeks back, one of the first resistors of the Afghanistan War. We had an interview with Jeff Patterson, who's a minister of the Objector Church, executive director of Courage to Resist, but also was a resistor, U.S. Marine Corps resistor of the first Gulf War. We had an interview with Blake Lemoyne, who was a war resistor back in the day, but also shared about alternative forms of spirituality. We had an interview with Anya, another minister of the Objector Church, about the importance of dance and physical motion in spirituality. These interviews, I think, are important. They're bringing some folks to the table that wouldn't be otherwise heard maybe as readily. And then on our weekly basis, just having these conversations, we're giving people a chance to ask questions. Think about it. For any of you who do go to religious services, visit churches or other kinds of community, how often do you get to ask questions right then? A few places do. My previous church right before this was a notable exception. They had a sermon response time after every sermon. But most of the time, you don't get to do that. What we have here, where we're having real conversation, this is something special, I think. Also, another thing I want to continue to do is to really grow and build our community here in Oklahoma City and around the world. One of the things that I'm really excited about is our chance to work here with Nappy Ritz Books. And there's a lot of exciting things happening here all the time. There's a tutoring project happening, but also they have a small community garden that they're in the process of putting together. And I'm helping with that as part of my work with the Oklahoma Objector Church. It's a really important thing. And finally, the other thing I want to do is to continue to be able to take on deserving cases that come my way, sent to me by Courage to Resist or the GI Rights Network, from people who are taking the risk for conscience sake, for their own political, social beliefs against war. I want to take on those cases and not worry about the money. Right now, I can't take every case that comes my way. Cases I want to take because I need to pay the bills. But particular conscience cases, I never want to turn one of those cases away if I can do it. And so the paid staff is an important part of that. Anyway, all that is to say, I will be posting probably tomorrow or the next day full details on the crowdsource funding campaign. And so that'll be coming up. For those of you who can give, thank you, thank you, thank you. For those of you who can't give, please share it on social media, help others, and reach out. Also, I forgot to mention one really important thing we talked about previously in the webcast was the science of spirituality, or the spirituality of science, or whichever way it is. We had Rena on as a guest. Well, I hope to have a lot more people on. I'd love to talk to people in the world of the sciences to talk about what are the aspects of the natural world, the technological world that inspire them, that make them feel hopeful about the future and about humanity. And so those are things I really want to explore in future webcasts. And so anyway, that's what we want to keep doing. We have a lot of good stuff happening. By the way, before we go on, I'm going to check comments real quick, but I also want to mention we are having our first, what we hope will be monthly get-togethers of the Oklahoma Objector Church. And this will be starting, let me double check on this date, make sure I got this right. But it will be on Sunday, June 2nd, a week from today. We'll have there's more details about that right now on the Oklahoma Objector Church page on Facebook. But we're really excited about this, and we're wanting to really build, we're not just an online presence, an online community, but actual in-person kind of community. We're having our meetings here at Nappy Ritz Books on the northeast side, right close to Northeast 36th and Kelly, here in Oklahoma City. So encourage you, if you're in Oklahoma City or in Oklahoma period, you want to come out for, we'd love to have you. So there's more details about that June 2nd on Sunday. So I think that is it for now, unless we got any other comments, questions, etc. I'm gonna real quick double check, make sure I'm not missing anybody. And I apologize in advance for the problems with comments. Again, every time I've relocated, it's always been a little tricky working out some of the kinks here. Computer I have here is a little slower, and it just has been kind of persnickety. But we'll try to load this up one more time before I throw in the towel for today. While I'm doing this, I do want to mention if anyone has thoughts on future topics or future guests you'd love to see interviewed here in our webcast, please post them in the comments or shoot me an email. My email is james@objector.church. Okay, well, I'm not getting the comments to pull up right now, so if there were more, I apologize in advance. We didn't read them on the air, but I will, right after this, I'll get on Facebook and we'll respond as needed. So anyway, thank you so much for everyone who has tuned in. If you'd like to learn more about us, stay connected. join our community. You can find out all of that at Objector.Church. Again, that is Objector.Church. Well, thank you so much, and we will see you next week, same time and place. And if you're in Oklahoma City, again, come to our local event that same evening. So take care now, and bye.